12 o'clock. Welcome to Sports, Clicks, and Politics with your hosts, Ben Hussong and me, Shawn Hannon. Welcome to episode 40 of Sports, Clicks, and Politics, the big 4-0. We made it to 40.
How about that?
That's an achievement, I think.
I agree.
Everything's downhill from 40.
I've heard that.
Yeah. Have you got there yet? No?
No.
Oh.
I'll let you know when I do.
Okay, good.
I got a couple of years.
Don't speed yourself up here. How's things?
Everything's good, man. How are you?
I'm good. I want to thank everybody for joining us again here, episode number 40 again. Quite a eventful week in New York news. Anyway, we're going to cover all that. Follow up on some of the stuff that we talked about last week with the removal of emergency powers, which seems like almost inconsequential piece of news these days, since we've had such inundation of new news since then.
Or how about what a joke that removal actually was?
Sure, right. I mean, quote unquote removal of powers.
Right.
So we're going to touch on all things Cuomo this episode. We don't really have too much as far as sports action going on. I think Bryson got a win over the weekend. I think I saw that. I didn't check in on that, but not a lot going on in sports right now. The NBA All-Star game, not quite a thing. So
Steph Curry's really good at shooting threes.
Always has been.
It's weird.
I heard that was exciting. I did not watch that either. We do have some. We didn't really plan to discuss this, but only because it's kind of moved so much this morning. I see I got GME above my head, up to 181. It looks like right now.
Not bad.
Yeah, it looks like the the Chewy CEO who recently purchased a large chunk of the ownership of the company, announced or released an e-commerce plan today, basically trying to take them from more of a brick and mortar, just a shopping place to some online presence as well. So with that, diamond hands, holding strong.
To the moon.
To the moon, right? So GME is up to 181. And I know I usually keep you guys updated on Bitcoin too, so you can check on Bitcoin over my head. That's still floating above 50,764 right now. I don't think that's updating here, maybe. 50,000. Yeah, 50,700. So we're still above 50,000 for both of those, and GME's got a little move. But let's talk about some of the things that are happening in New York as far as COVID and these restrictions. So we're going to go over some of the restrictions that have been loosened. We're going to kind of touch on the Excelsior Pass, which is a New York State innovation to help us get into events.
Makes me so sad.
And then we're going to touch on the things that kind of made a lot of the news. The continued cover-up of the top aides from Cuomo's administration, basically, again, purposely massaging the report that was outlined by the Department of Health, basically removing the total nursing home death numbers from that report. So we'll touch on that a little bit. And then, obviously, everybody's talking about the now up to 5 accusers.
Watch out now.
5 accusers who have alleged sexual harassment by our governor.
Who was it that said if they got any more, then they would encourage the governor to
Stuart Cousins. She's the Senate Majority Leader. She came out and now is in favor of resignation. So at least she's stuck. Yeah.
How funny is it that that's your line in the sand? Like, if you sexually harass 2 women, okay, but if there's a third, that's the line in the sand right here. Yeah,
she's like, if there's one more, here we got 2 more. So, and she did. She, I would say to her credit, but she at least backed up her statement by saying, yes, he should be resigned.
So this is like the biggest cop out for all of these politicians to be like, I am calling for the governor to resign. Everybody looks at the governor. The governor goes, I'm not resigning. Yeah. You look back at the people like, impeachment? Well, let's not be hasty.
Yeah, right. Well, so that's where we're going to go. We're going to cover all that today. So let's go back to these restrictions, because we just got a little bit of news just as you were pulling into the studio here, my friend.
And we are.
Are we excited about this, or are we not excited about this? CDC says fully vaccinated people can gather in small groups without masks. This is new guidelines, directly fully inoculated people to wear masks and observe social distancing in public. So this has come out. This is 11 a.m. this morning, printed in the Wall Street Journal. We've talked about immunity from a vaccinated person versus immunity for somebody who's acquired immunity through natural acquiring
just
of the disease.
getting
Right.
the virus. Right.
I'm assuming, I don't know this should apply to those folks as well, to those who have already had COVID. I can't imagine why they would be subjected to wearing a mask when the vaccinated people wouldn't. But I don't know. Do you want to talk about this Wall Street Journal article real quick here? I know we didn't really have a lot to go over it.
No, it's just comical of like, all right, so if you're vaccinated, now I love the wording, and this is what I'm always big on with all the media, because the media gives you an impression, and then people just run with it without paying attention to the actual words. So right in the article, it says, it is possible that vaccinated people could still get infected by the virus and transmit it to others who are at risk for severe disease. Okay, yeah, I've been saying this all along. Listen, I've read the reports. They have nothing in there that says they're going to stop you from preventing it, or prevent you from spreading it. And it's not even proven to really stop you from getting it. And even if it does, we don't know how long it lasts. You don't know what you're talking about. That's not what they said. Like, all right, whatever. So now that they're trying to make the claim of is that there's. All right, I'm just going to read the sentence, and then we'll go with what you think it says versus what it really says. But early research suggests vaccinated people are less likely to get infected and potentially less likely to spread the virus, the CDC said. So what you hear when you read that is, oh, it looks like there is going to be that the vaccine will stop you from getting it, or at least make it way less likely, and will probably stop you from spreading it, or at least that's what's probable. That's not what it says. So breaking the sentence down into its two parts, it's early research suggests, not concludes, not indicates, suggests, so it's possible. Early research suggests vaccinated people are less likely to get infected. So you might be. You might not be. There's another way of saying that. We don't know. The research is early, and all they have is a suggestion, and if you read what they're drawing this conclusion from, you will laugh, because it is a joke to call this science. It is absurd what they are claiming and how they are reaching this. But now let's break down the other part. Early research suggests vaccinated people are potentially less likely to spread the virus. So the early research suggests that potentially you may be somewhat less likely to spread the disease.
So you're saying there's a chance.
How many qualifiers do you need in a sentence before you start to realize, like, this is lawyer speak 101 of how you say something without saying it? Because if they ever get called on it, then they can come back and say, whoa, we said it was early and was just a suggestion. Because what they actually did on all of these are, if you vaccinate people that were never at risk of dying of the virus in the first place, or at minimal risk, I shouldn't say no risk, then of course you're going to get better results. Like, this is laughable of what they're trying to spin this into, of what are the odds? Give me the actual percentages, because you know what? Less likely to spread the virus could mean that without vaccination, I am at a 40% chance, but less likely with it would be 39.5%. That's less. That meets this qualification of what they are actually saying in these studies. So I'm telling people, I'm begging you, read what they actually say, because you'll find yourself looking so mystified at all of this, going, what? That's not a good conclusion to draw. You're trying to lead people. That's all you're doing.
And this comes on the piggybacking on the states Texas and Mississippi, and I think Alabama actually may be coming down this path too, of removing mask mandates altogether. I think they also increased or removed all capacity limitations for businesses, so restaurants could open at 100% capacity, and there's no mask mandate. I'm assuming this is going to pick up steam as more and more places do this with no calamity, and I don't expect New York to be on the the forefront of this movement, but
no. Instead, we've got a rule that now says restaurants will be able to go up to 75% capacity. 75, that's better than 50, but they're instituting it on March 19th. Is there any significance to March 17th for bars and restaurants?
Just a slight.
Like for most restaurants, it's one of, if not the absolute largest income day of the entire year for St. Patrick's Day. So we couldn't have let that happen March 16th so that people could have gone out and these bars could have had an inflow of money on the biggest drinking day, the second biggest, because parade day and the Saturday surrounding it is usually the biggest. But the day itself is the second biggest day of the year for income for these people. Seriously, have we not dumped on them enough? We couldn't give them that?
Yeah.
I mean, just like, that's looking at them and be like, screw you. So what?
And like I said, it's not like, the disease is less there on the 18th versus the 19th, right? So clearly,
why isn't it today?
Right, exactly. It should be just immediate.
Right, and like, good. Take down all this nonsense that you have in here, because my point on all these restrictions from day one, it's not because I want to get COVID. It's not because I want anybody else to get COVID. It's not because I don't think COVID is serious. It's not because I don't think it's a threat to millions of people. It absolutely is. All that we are doing is having zero impact on fighting the virus and is destroying people's lives, livelihoods, and businesses. Like, the data could not be more clear. And if it was actually having an impact on the spread, we could have a debate on whether it's worth it. It's having no impact. Look at the areas around the country and around the world that had zero restrictions and yet somehow had the exact same curve as everywhere that had full restrictions. It's not to say that if you do nothing, nobody will get COVID. It's that if you do everything, you'll still get COVID. Statistically speaking, obviously you may on an individual basis be the exception, but overall, big picture, which is what public policy is supposed to be based on, you're having no impact. You're not stopping the spread. You're not fighting the virus at all.
Yeah, and even with the loosening of these restrictions, so 75% capacity means something to one business and something else to a completely different business, right? If your business is a tiny little coffee shop with a seating of 6, okay, well, you can't have 75% capacity because 6 feet apart is not going to allow you to do that. So there's going to be still some arbitrariness to these 75, 50, whatever the percent he wants to kind of lay out for safety. Like, they're still having real world impact, even though it seems as though they're loosening the restrictions. Most of these places still can't operate at any kind of profit. They can't, they're not being able to bring back employees. So we're just sitting here in a stagnant economy waiting for us to loosen these restrictions and giving us arbitrary dates and arbitrary percentages to kind of do so. It's all nonsense.
It's crazy. It's like you're feeding an egomaniac's ego with every time that you continue to do this. And we have been beaten into submission. I have friends telling me all the time, like, I'll do it just to get this over with. Like, no, it's not going to work. It's not going to get it over with. It's going to have no impact whatsoever on when we're out of this.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to have a big, like, listen, cases, when we hit 7-day moving average for cases per day across the country, peaked at like 300,000. Now the 7-day moving average is at like 55,000. It's not because everybody's vaccinated. Like 10% of the population's vaccinated, if that. All right, so that's not it. It's not because we started wearing 2 masks. It's not because masks suddenly started working 10 months after we started wearing them. And it's around the country. Florida, Texas, Mississippi, New York, Connecticut, California. We're all seeing the exact same spread. So at what point do you realize, or at what point do you start to at least think maybe, man, we really screwed up. We didn't do this right at all. Like, we went crazy. We lost our mind. We the same thing. We lost our minds about H1N1. We lost our minds about all of these things because this is what happens when you let an infectious disease doctor who's a 38-year bureaucrat in the government and the highest paid person in our federal government create public policy. Of course the answer is more him. Of course the answer is more Andrew Cuomo. They're the savior. They're the answer to our problems. They are here to save our lives, unless you live in a nursing home in New York. But aside from that, we're here to save the day, and you just need us to do it. And the reality is they're doing nothing. They're Don Quixote attacking windmills. This is craziness, and we're all standing by, like, if they just get this last windmill, the threat will be gone. Like, what? No. The threat is still real regardless, but you're introducing a new threat by allowing these egomaniacal sociopaths to dictate every single part of your life. This is insanity. We're making bigger problems. Deaths of despair, suicide, addictions are up. Like, it's so bad what we have done. And all we can say now is, well, hopefully we'll get it over with. Like, even in response to when Texas and Mississippi announced this, I read somebody on Twitter that said, oh my God, all they had to do, we were almost there, just a few more months and we would have been over this, but they had to ruin it. And I stared at that of like when it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve, that's your couple of months. You think that that's how this was going to go? What in the world have these people done to make you trust them? Seriously.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you're preaching to the choir here a little bit. So we're
in a bit of an echo chamber.
Part of the loosening of the instructions or the restrictions is large events. I don't know if you know that if you have one person in your party wearing a white dress, that your safety protocols are different than an event where multiple people can wear it any color they want.
I mean, that makes sense.
So weddings have their own set of rules versus other large groups of settings because for whatever reason, I don't even know what they are, but they have totally different set of rules. It's crazy. So
I quit.
And some of these large events, going back to the Bills game, you remember here in New York, they finally allowed fans into Bill Stadium there, and they've done the same thing here at the Dome. I don't know what we call the Dome anymore, right? The Dome?
It's good enough. We'll
the
go
Dome.
with that.
So there was a lacrosse game, I believe, over the weekend here in Syracuse that allowed fans to help make you feel safe at that event, Mr. Hussong. Your Governor Andrew Cuomo, has offering you something he likes to refer to as the Excelsior Pass. It is something that's going to allow you to attend events safely and securely all across the state. And all you got to do is put it in your wallet.
It's a mask.
It's not a mask. It's an app.
Oh, that makes more sense.
It's an app.
What does this app do, Shawn?
Oh, it lets the event coordinator / owner operator, whoever is checking your pass, to know whether or not you have a vaccine or have been recently tested.
Okay, so if I don't get tested and I don't get vaccinated, then I'm just not allowed to go to these things.
I believe that's going to be the case, yes.
It's amazing. You know what? George Orwell should be proud of himself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So you guys may have seen this. This was early in the week here, where Governor Cuomo offered this Excelsior Pass to try to, make himself seem important to create a way for us to safely attend events. So be prepared to have the Excelsior Pass in your Apple Wallet or the app on your phone there so that you can. No? You're shaking your head no?
0% chance. No. And again, let's go back to this. The vaccine has not been proven to stop you from spreading it. The one study that concluded it might, suggesting possible slight reduction in your capacity to spread it, was nonsense. Okay, but we're relying on that anyway because it fits the narrative better. So I'm supposed to give over to the government and just concede on this restriction on liberty, and it's a minor restriction. I acknowledge that. I get nervous about any time I give the government more control over what I do and more insight into my movements. All for what benefit exactly? To prove that I've got a vaccine that we don't even know if the antibodies will last 6 months? Brilliant. And again, all for a virus that I am at a statistically 0% chance of dying from? Again, brilliant. Yeah. What are we doing? This is nuts. If this vaccine had actually been established at 100% or even 99% certainty that it'll actually stop the spread of COVID, I would be more on board. But it doesn't. If we had established early on that COVID was actually as deadly as early indicated, I would be on board. But it's not. I'm sorry, but the fact that they count every person who had COVID as a COVID death does inherently and necessarily rise the death count above what it actually is. The only question is how much. And we're a year in and we've never gone back to look at that. Are we just not interested?
Yeah, just for if you die in New York with a positive COVID test within 60 days of your death, you are a COVID positive patient
automatically. And COVID is the cause of death.
And some deaths in some states are 30 days within. So every state is a little different, and we just happen to be 60 days. So there's not a true way to compare some of these numbers too.
Yeah, we've abandoned common sense and we've turned to the government for security and safety to make us feel better. And now we're turning to the government and asking for our own freedom back from them of fine, I will let you have access to my medical records, my phone, and everything else so you can see how good I comply. Just let me go to a concert. I will tell you flat out that my answer is no. If you decide this is okay, good for you. I'm not here to tell anybody else how to live. I hope you understand why some people are a little bit skeptical or why some people are adamantly opposed to this. No, I will not get the vaccine because there are so many inconsistencies and it does not make sense to me how they got to this point. And I think the vaccine is probably safe and I'm not going to tell anybody else what to do. If you want to get it, good for you. You make your own decisions. Before you look down on me and say I'm a threat to public health and safety, maybe ask me why. Maybe understand that I'm not here to just be cavalier with anybody's health or life, but I'm also not here to just be willingly compliant with unnecessary rules and restrictions because historically speaking, when you go down that road as a society, you don't come back. You don't ever get those back easily, peacefully, or anything else. And that sounds crazy, but you know what? Guess what? In the 1930s, Germany thought they were pretty modern too. Same with China in the 1960s. Same with the USSR. Everybody was the pinnacle of human society to that point in time, and it still happened over and over and over. If you think we're immune to it now just because it's modern, you're not paying attention to what history actually says. And I'm not telling you it's going to happen. My contention is, anytime, historically speaking, a society willingly starts handing over more and more personal freedoms, the slope does not reverse itself. And it doesn't stagnate. It doesn't plateau. It only goes more and more and more and more. And that might not concern you. Good for you. It does me. That is a problem, because I do think anytime you let the government get to the point that it's going to, it is inherently bad for individuals. People suffer that didn't need to suffer whenever we go down this road.
Yeah, and I would say, we suffer maybe more than most, or much more than most here in New York with our leadership here. So,
well, it's easy for you to say. You've never been his aide.
That's true.
You think you suffer under him.
Speaking of his aides,
did you like that segue?
They're not really great people, as it turns out. Shocking.
It's weird.
I mean, I don't know. Either they're not great people, or they will do anything for their boss, right? I don't know what the deal is here, but they just cannot get out of their own way here. So you may have heard, we had this whole Coverup where we kind of hid the desk and whatnot, and along those roads, we had along the timeline, there was a internal investigation from the Department of Health, and the Department of Health had a preliminary report that they presented to the aides of the governor, and the aides basically scrubbed it of the nursing home data in order to get the favorable outcome that they wanted from the report. So this has all come to light here, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 days ago. It seems light years away now, but the cover-up has not continued to go away. There's more evidence, dripping out about that as well, and where it went. In some ways, we're going to get into the sexual harassment accusations. They've kind of distracted away from some of the, or a lot of the nursing home criticism. This came right on the heels of, or this came right before all the most recent sexual harassment allegations. So this one kind of got pushed a little bit to the back. But so I mean, listen, I wish we were still talking about this as the primary reason to remove Cuomo from office. I'll take it any way I can get it. But this still needs to be investigated, even if he's removed tomorrow. The swamp is way deep in Albany.
Listen, as somebody who was obviously an avowed Cuomo-sexual for a lot of months, like I was a huge, huge fan early on. That might not check out. All right, well, that's just a lie. But either way, this is crazy. And I've made this point, you've made this point. Andrew Cuomo is Donald Trump with worse policies. They're the same person. It's just one of them has even worse policies than the other. That's the difference. It's a blind loyalty is required to me above everything else. Not your ideals, not your constituents. To me, I will threaten, I will coerce, I will strong arm, I will do whatever I have to do. I will bribe to get what I want done. So we've known this for a long time. This isn't exactly new information. But it's funny to me to see the inconsistency of people, of these guys coming out. I mean, listen, this is black and white. They have acknowledged they covered up the data. This is worse.
They're still employed.
Right. They still have jobs that we pay them to do after they hid data to protect the governor. And all we can think is like, well, it wasn't illegal. Really? That's the standard we have in New York for politicians now? As long as it's not, conclusively illegal, it's okay. Because it's still better than the other guy. Who's the other guy? There is no other guy. Nobody's running against Andrew Cuomo right now. Somebody sure will. I don't see him resigning. I think he's going to take the Ralph Northam playbook right out of Virginia when he got caught doing blackface, and everybody went, you got to resign, you got to resign. And he went,
Well, so let's get into that a little bit. We'll for future events, I'm sure we will touch on more of this nursing home data and the cover-up that went along with it. So, but let's talk about the sensational items that kind of hit the news this week. We had a fourth and a fifth, at least. I don't know. Maybe there was a third between the last show.
There
Who
was.
knows? Okay.
It's
so third,
now.
fourth, and fifth was 5 total accusers, 3 former aides, and 2 other women. One was at a wedding, and I can't remember where the other one was from. But all of these women are accusing some form of harassment, unwanted touching, unwanted advancement, whatever. I don't want to diminish them. There's no like forcible like
it wasn't
assault.
Harvey Weinstein.
Right. It wasn't right.
Stuff.
It wasn't on that level by any means.
Right.
That being said, he's the governor.
The clear power.
Right. He is the. It's not. That shouldn't be a thing. So the fact that they had to deal with that and work under that, and some of them didn't, they left. This is, I think we're up to, I got 5 accusers and something like 12 different Democrat leaders of some sort have called for some sort of resignation, including the Senate Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, Democrat again. And her words was must resign. So I found that interesting as opposed to should resign. It was a must resign, which is
what's she going to do about it?
Well, we're going to find out, Mr. Hussong, because as you may have heard, your governor, after with all these calls of resignation, Cuomo says he's not going anywhere. He says, actually, I think the quote was, "No way am I resigning." So,
well, it's because the people elected him, and he will not allow politicians to force him out because he is a man.
He's trying to protect democracy in the state, he said.
Obviously. Of the man of the people, Andrew Cuomo.
Like, there hasn't been democracy in New York State for at least 10 months, maybe 12.
I mean, you could argue years, but yeah, let's go with months. 10
at
months.
Least. At least. Literally, you could argue there's been no
the
democracy.
Pretext.
Yeah.
They dropped the pretense of there being some sort of democracy as of last February, when they just gave Andrew Cuomo full dictatorial power over the state of New York and let him do whatever they want. This whole thing is such a sham. It's like if it wasn't in real life and it wasn't real people being affected, it would be hilarious. Like if you read this in a movie, you'd be like, "Nah, it's too unbelievable. It's too crazy. Nobody would buy it." Because legitimately, like this, remind me of the woman's name again, the Senate Majority Leader.
Andrea Stewart-Cousins.
Andrea Stewart-Cousins came out when the first 2 women or 3 women came out, and they're like, "Do you think he should resign?" And she's like, "I think we should wait and hear it out. But if one more accuser comes out, then we have to." What? Okay, so 3 women accusing the governor of sexual harassment.
Well, I don't know if you know this, Mr. Hussong. After the 4th accuser, the donation money starts to dwindle. So then when you start losing the donation money, you have to switch.
See, it's a good thing I got you here to explain to me how this stuff works.
Expert.
Yeah, I'm on the outside. So I look at this and I'm thinking, like, imagine thinking this is a well thought out idea. But even sadder to me is imagine being somebody that voted for this woman, that heard her say this and went, "Yeah, it makes sense." Like, wait. So 3 accusations with no investigation is okay. But 4 accusations with no investigation, nope, you got to go. That is the most arbitrary line I have ever heard being drawn over any subject.
It was funny that she made the line and literally the next day 2 people came out. So it was like, yeah, now what?
And then she comes out and says, "Oh, he must resign." Okay, well, he already said he's not. You going to impeach him?
Right. And so that's where we're going to go next, right? So he does say, "Hey, I'm not resigning." I think his quote was actually when asked, he was like, "There's no way I'm resigning." I had long thought that I thought
isn't going to voluntarily walk away.
Right. So,
Weird.
but I feel like there's got to be, even with the most megalomaniac person on the planet, there's got to be a point of concession. I feel like.
Let me know when you find it.
I haven't found it yet. I'm wrong up to now. So I still felt like he was going to resign. I don't necessarily feel that way anymore, but I do feel like there's going to be an impeachment process.
I don't think there will be.
Whether or not they actually fully impeach him, they will make the effort to start those proceedings.
Oh, yeah, they'll start it, but it's not going to go anywhere because this is a sham and it's a joke. And, like, listen, the fact that he's not being impeached over having his direct subordinates cover up data from nursing homes to prevent bad press about his executive order. The fact that people are not clamoring for this man to be removed from office under any means that it takes, have him placed under arrest, have him gone, have him impeached, have him removed, is craziness. Listen, we've talked about this at length on the show. I understand why the executive order was put in place. I get it. You were worried about overwhelming the health system. We didn't know anything about this virus yet. It was novel. It was brand new. None of that was actually 100% true, but let's not let that get in the way. At the time, we were all very nervous, and we were afraid we were going to overwhelm the health system, so we needed to flatten that curve so the same number of people got sick over a longer period of time, and the hospitals wouldn't get overwhelmed. I got it. Makes sense. 6 weeks later, the order was unceremoniously just removed. Like,
disappeared from the
tried
website.
to pretend like it was never the law and it didn't happen. All right, that's suspicious. Didn't even track nursing home deaths for the first 3 weeks that this rule was in effect. They weren't even tracking them. Wasn't even on the radar. Okay, you make mistakes. They happen. It's a pandemic. I'll let it slide. All of that I can actually understand, and I'm not going to say excuse, but I'm going to say, like, all right, look, I think it was wrong, and that he should pay a political cost for that, but I get where we came from. If he would have ended the order 4 weeks, I think I would have been more inclined to be okay with it even. But 6 weeks, and then when asked about it, not only does he just blatantly lie and say, like, well, that was according to the
CDC guidelines.
Yeah, the CDC and federal. That was Trump's rules. And then every organization in the federal government came out like, no, it wasn't. None of us told you to do that. That was you. Okay, well, that excuse fell. And then you decide to count nursing homes differently under the pretext of, well, we ought to be sure to not double count and inflate the numbers. Yeah, that was a big concern, that we were inflating the numbers early on. But okay, fine. You know every other state's counting them differently, and then you point to those numbers as proof that your executive order was fine?
I don't know if this is putting you on the spot because maybe you have an answer, but why? Like, why were they doing all this? Like, what? It seems as though trying to sell a book, even trying to, delay a federal investigation seems like minor reasons to go through this amount of cover-up.
It's my opinion is because you're dealing with somebody who is a massively, massively egomaniacal human being. Like, to the point of, I do believe sociopathic. I think that it's to that extent of cognitive dissonance will not allow him to believe he has done something wrong because he genuinely believes he is this good and this important. Like, down to this, he is Donald Trump. He believes that he is this important. So when you do this, you pass this order, which unequivocally and almost inarguably caused some people to die. Let's just call it what it is. There was a Syracuse.com had a reporter come out and be like, well, it didn't cause any deaths. Like, you're an idiot. I'm sorry. That's mean. I shouldn't have said that. That's a very stupid take.
Well, real quickly, and I'll just inject. So part of that reporting was an assertion by some Harvard medical doctor basically promoting the idea of asymptomatic spread, and that's why it mattered, right? So that it was, hey, this is a thing, so we need to be cautious of it. So his point was that most of these people were spreading the device not knowing they had it in these nursing homes. But like, right, and that's not been proven to be true by anyone. So the premise of his whole reporting was flawed, and that's why, not to use the word idiot, but like it was inaccurate because, okay, if we could prove that asymptomatic spread was a thing, then you could point to and say, okay, well, maybe this is where we had some asymptomatic spread, but we don't. It hasn't been proven to be a thing at all. And so if that's not a thing, how else did the virus get there and how else did it spread? And obviously we have another implement of this executive order that we can point to and say, hey, why don't we check this?
Right, and some people did come in who were symptomatic in the most vulnerable population, and they got put into the most vulnerable population known to humankind. And the organizations that ran the nursing homes went to Andrew Cuomo, went to Dr. Zucker, and said, we don't have PPE.
Immediately.
Right. You're going to have us take these people in. We don't have the PPE to take care of them. We don't have it. And they sent him a PDF of like a standard operating procedure for how to use your PPE safely. And they wrote back like, no, you don't understand. We don't have it. It's not a matter of we don't know how to use it. We don't have enough of it to do this. And Andrew Cuomo in a press conference said, it's not our job to get them PPE. It's their responsibility. They need to step up. All right, so you know they don't have it, and yet you force them to take COVID patients, and then you're not sure what's going to happen? And back to your asymptomatic spread, and then we'll get back to the original question of, listen, it's been a year, all right? It's been a year, and there's not one case of asymptomatic spread anywhere. I think we can conclusively, comfortably say asymptomatic spread is not a thing. And it's never been the driver of any influenza-like illness or any pandemic before, so there's no reason to suspect it would be this time other than people are scared and overreact. And they read things like asymptomatic spread may be possible according to early data. And then they never get away from that to realize that it didn't happen. Pre-symptomatic spread has happened. It's not very common, but it's happened. It's more common than asymptomatic spread, but it's not nearly as common as symptomatic spread. The most common way this virus is spread is through somebody with symptoms. I'm sorry if that's inconvenient to you or if you want to argue that point, but the data is very, very clear. The most common way this spreads is symptomatically. So you're telling me that all the nursing homes, the fire through dry grass, as Andrew Cuomo wanted to call it, was all due to asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic spread of the families and the employees working at nursing homes? Yeah. That doesn't check out. I mean, listen, sure, some probably, but the fact that you sent symptomatic people that were in the prime mortality rate and age group back into this environment, that you don't think that had anything to do with it? It's a joke.
Yeah.
That's the most flawed reasoning imaginable. Anyways, so why? The why to me is because This man is more concerned about his political opportunities and career than anything else. So if he can cover up the idea that New York State...
Real quick, I want to piggyback on just that one point. So political career. So this is all... he's starting this cover-up in June, right? So like this is full-blown cover-up mode in June.
Of course.
Okay, well, we're still 6 months away from a presidential race. So what is his political life... Like, what is he fighting for? He's not running for anything. I mean, obviously, he's
going to.
So I guess this is what I'm trying to figure out. So you're saying that Cuomo's desire to be whatever, the leader of the world, was distorting his decisions and making sure that he was covering his ass all the way up until he got there.
Yeah, well, like once he screwed up and once he saw it and he knew, and again, this could have been avoided, but this is where the ego comes in, to just say, we got it wrong. Instead, he went after Florida and said, you played politics with this virus and you lost. I mean, what contest in hell did New York win? None. Not on COVID. We were the worst. Us in New Jersey, which let's just lump us together because most of it was in New York City. So I think that it came down to, at that point, he's more worried. And this is what the aide basically confirmed, in my opinion, of we were worried about a federal investigation coming to light. And then what would we have done? So we covered up the data. And even now, like, listen, this has all been updated. And how many times has Andrew Cuomo or anybody else been called before any legislative body, New York State, federal government, anything, to have to answer for this?
None.
Right. No, we're talking about sexual harassment from 20 years ago instead, which, don't get me wrong, is an important issue, and we should absolutely flesh it out, investigate it, and find out what happened and go down that path. But the idea that we would focus on that instead of the fact that he undercounted nursing home deaths and like, oh, well, it didn't change the overall count. Right. But it counted the thing that he was directly influencing with his laws and with his orders. He's the one who said you had to take these patients. He knew they didn't have PPE. And then when more nursing home people died, you think it's a coincidence that he covered that up? How much benefit of the doubt are you going to give this guy? What has he done to earn that?
Yeah, I still feel like there's got to be more, and maybe this is to what Assemblyman Kim was talking about for that legal immunity. I mean, I don't know how to get the information there, but I can't imagine that didn't factor a role in all of this.
I mean, some of it, I think, was just trying to wait out Trump. Because if Trump wins the re-election, he's in a lot of trouble because now there will be an investigation at some point by the Department of Justice into your handling of this. Oddly enough, Joe Biden's the president now, and I haven't heard anybody call for, talk about, or even suggest, hey, maybe we should do a federal inquiry. Let me ask you this. Ron DeSantis does the same thing, covers up nursing home deaths and reclassifies them as hospital deaths. What is the coverage like?
Yeah, there's
wall to wall.
Yeah.
It's never going to stop. Instead, I mean, listen, we had that woman who literally went in and changed data and was like the whistleblower who wasn't.
SU grad.
God help us all. And that got national media attention. She's on 60 Minutes or some such nonsense and getting all this coverage for stuff that was clearly false, like verifiably false, what she was making accusations of. We have now what has been absolutely proven true, beyond a shadow of a doubt, and we're talking about sexual harassment instead of 1,000 senior citizens that are dead that didn't need to die.
I mean, I do think it goes to a bigger characterization of Cuomo and his administration because they seem to do whatever they want, right? So whether or not it's sexual harassment, whether or not it's cover-up data, whether it's thwart a federal investigation, whether it's disseminate bad information, he just lives in a bubble. He's a tyrant and gets to do whatever he wants. He's a dictator.
Right. I mean, listen, even when he tried to spin it off and say, like, when they first started looking at this, and his response was, well, I think the bigger issue is the vaccine. Like, Trump didn't order enough vaccines to inoculate the whole country. That's shocking. Well, no, it's not, because based on any survey ever done across the country, less than half of the population is willing to get inoculated, is willing to get the vaccine. Less than half. So we just went and bought enough vaccines to immunize everybody when less than 50% are going to let you put the needle in their arm. That is government spending right there. That is the efficiency of our government. So Andrew Cuomo's thing is just deflect, and hopefully eventually it'll move on, and he'll be left to just run New York State. And here's the thing, sexual harassment you can come back from. You can. You have to apologize. You got to do the I'm sorry tour. You got to go away for a year.
I mean, you
or two.
at least have to be at least contrite at some point.
Correct.
He hasn't been that yet,
but as long as he keeps fighting it, and then he can come back and say, "Hey, I'm sorry. It was this. I'm learning, and I know that was inappropriate. I'm going to do better." You could be welcomed back, especially if you are a Democrat. Like, that's the rules of the game. I'm sorry. Like, Republicans can get forgiven easier for other stuff by their side. This is one that will get more easily forgiven by Democrats. So that means your political career isn't over. You kill 1,000 people with an executive order, you're never coming back. That's something that you don't ever come back from. Especially, I shouldn't say that. You could have under this circumstance until you covered it up. Now it's too far gone. So now it's all covered up, and now he has, what's his incentive to just come clean?
Right, and so I don't know, maybe this is, I don't know, I'm not trying to imply collusion here, but does the protection of New York and the handling of their nursing homes protect some of these other states who handled it similarly? I mean, there's obviously been some other states who went along the same path, Michigan and New Jersey and even Pennsylvania, I think. So is this a Democrat plot to thwart the Democrat nursing home story with a Democrat sexual harassment story?
No. I mean, listen, maybe, but I don't believe there's that level of coordination. I think these people are more opportunistic than master planners. And I think that I could be wrong. Listen,
so
maybe
do you think if they saw this opportunity then as a sexual harassment that they're going to use it to take down Cuomo as opposed to allowing him being taken down for the nursing home thing?
Listen, of course.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes. I think that is very plausible. If you look around, they need anything to take away from what they have done. And this is more on the Democrats than the Republicans, although, my God, the Republicans are not immune from criticism for COVID response.
It's hard for Governor Abbott in Texas to be congratulated for removing his mask mandate when he had it the whole time anyway.
Yeah, when he's the one who put it in. So, like, look, I get it, but if you look at what happened in New York and California and Michigan and Pennsylvania, New Jersey and Connecticut, it's worse. I mean, these states collectively, and I'm not talking about COVID results, I'm talking about economic results and the number of people put in poverty. So now we've got a $1.9 trillion stimulus bill that everybody's going to get $1,400 per person. Cool. So what we're going to do then is you put all these people into poverty, so you made them lose their income for a year if you're in the hospitality industry, but you paid them to stay home with enhanced unemployment and everything else. So now they're collecting money without contributing anything into the society or any economic gain, and now you're going to throw more money at this problem. And I guess that's fine until the time comes as, can we pay back $30 trillion in debt? Is that possible?
Zero
Right.
chance.
And, we're going to do a wealth tax. All right, cool. And by the most glorious estimates you could come up with, assuming no billionaire does any mitigation effects whatsoever, you're going to raise $3 trillion over 10 years. Great. Like, at this path, the pace that we're on right now, we're going to be at $45 trillion of debt by then. You're going to reduce it to 42? Oh, buddy, problem solved. Thank God for you people. Like, this is nuts. So all of this thing that you just keep manipulating is, why do we continue to look to the government as if it's going to do something effective? For the love of God, the Javits ship went to New York City to be the healthcare place for non-COVID patients. If they kept COVID out of the ship, they could treat all these people and it would be wonderful. The first person on the ship had COVID. Number one. Like, you can't make up that level of incompetence. It's amazing. I'm not telling you that private sector is perfect. It's not. It's the lesser of two evils when it comes to anything having to do efficiently. And ultimately, with private sector doing things, I have the option of doing it or supporting them or not. If I don't like Apple's policies, I don't have to buy an Apple product. If I don't like Facebook's policies, I don't have to join Facebook. Those are my free market decisions. The government, like, if they made a mandate that everybody has to have an Excelsior Pass, what is my option? Leave the state. That's it. Like, this is my point. They can coerce you into things. So as the government continues to think it's the answer, everything they do is to tighten it a little bit more and a little bit more. Qualified immunity is a great example of this for police officers. Federal laws that apply to all 50 states are insane to me from the beginning because all of these states are so different. So they passed this law that all police officers get full qualified immunity. I mean, okay, fine. Now they want to pass a law to undo that. And that nobody can have qualified immunity. So wait a minute, you screwed it up the first time, and then some judge, like on an appellate level, read this into the rule, even though it wasn't really the intent of the law at the time. And now you think the answer is to pass a more broadly sweeping law to correct it? And you don't think there's going to be any long-term negative consequences to that?
Yeah, listen.
What?
I the only thing I do is try to get the federal government to give powers to the states and for the states to give powers to the municipalities. That's all I want from my governments anytime I can get it. So
imagine if there was just like 6 enumerated powers that the federal government took care of and that everything else went to the states.
Yeah, the efficiency of that.
I mean, imagine what that would be like. It would be like, how it was designed. But instead, we've led interstate commerce to mean anything that happens anywhere. And now the federal government gets to dictate schools, policing, elections, and this next one. Like everything on a local issue that the Washington, D.C. people have no business doing, they're involved with now. And I'm not partial to either side. They're both awful. Like, I love that Republicans are suddenly concerned about spending again. That's cool. Where were you last year? Signing away $6 trillion in additional spending. That's where you're supporting it.
Selective outrage.
Right. And now that it's a Democrat in charge, it's like, we got to stop the spending. At this point, here's the reality. It doesn't matter. You can't stop this now. I'm kind of resigned to this fact of, I read an article today that said hyperinflation is not a concern. And the reasoning was because, inflation's low right now. Right.
Well,
yeah, so when we get up to unemployment, and then the government will just stop spending, and they'll stop printing money, and then everything will be fine. What? Well, like, that's not an if-then statement. Like, we are already down this path. We added a 50% increase to the national debt in 11 months. 50%. We can't tax our way out of this, and we don't have the wherewithal or the gravitas to actually stop or cut spending. We're not going to. Neither party is. It's just a matter of what they spend on.
No, those things always end in a war, unfortunately.
Yeah,
real quickly, GameStop over 200.
Hey-o. So now we're bombing Syria, and now we're going to go do all this other craziness. Halliburton stock, now it's a full-on 100% increase from the day Joe Biden was declared the winner to today.
Dick Cheney's happy.
Oh, God bless Dick Cheney, because if anybody needed more money and good things to happen to him, it's that guy. But that aside, Raytheon up. All these defense contractors. I know it's a coincidence that the Department of Defense is now being led by a former board member of Raytheon. That's all on the up and up and not at all a conflict of interest. And again, the same stuff happens on both sides of the aisle. This is the system that we have asked for. And there's people out there that can't wait to give them more power, to give them more control and more to do. I just don't get it.
And so, speaking of both sides, let's wrap up the show and the Cuomo Hour on impeachment version 2.0, version 2 Cuomo, version whatever you want to call it here, the New York style version of impeachment. We touched on it briefly. I don't know the numbers offhand of how we would have to get impeached. I think there's maybe they need is it 2/3? I don't know. I have to look at the impeachment protocols. But anyway,
look it up because it's obviously going to happen.
I assume that they're going to go into these proceedings, right? So they're going to get it set up and go forward with this. There's seemingly too many people in positions to make it happen that want to make it happen. So I think it's going to start. It seemed as though you didn't think impeachment was going to happen. So no, you don't think impeachment's going to happen?
I think it'll start, but I don't think they can get the votes. I don't think they have anywhere near enough people that will actually come out and do it. I really don't.
Well, so you assume all the Republicans are going to vote, right?
I would never make that assumption. No.
That's probably fair, too. There's probably a couple.
Listen, you and I both know how this state runs, all right? And it's a lot of backroom stuff. It's a lot of look the other way handshake stuff between the two sides to get stuff done. And I'm under no illusions that this is going to be any different. I just don't think it is. I think it's going to be more of the same.
Do you think it gets media coverage? Not like the presidential impeachment, but do you think it actually, when they're going through this, do you think that's going to get covered?
No. I think the sexual harassment will get covered. And if he gets impeached over sexual harassment, which...
Well, that's the intention, right? So I don't think they're going after the harassment charges. It seems as though, Ron Kim has different... His impeachment efforts are actually for the nursing homes and the covering up of the data and this legal immunity, all that stuff, right? So he's got a different agenda a little bit. I don't know. I don't know if maybe you have an idea. Can they impeach with a multiple of offenses and
sure,
and have the nursing home / sexual harassment all in one package? Just take them out.
I would assume so. Like if you've done more than one thing wrong, you can be accused of it. I guess
because it goes to abuse of power. I think the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure like what the state level or what the requirements are. At a federal level, it's you could be impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors. So I'm not sure sexual harassment. You're gonna have a hard time establishing that as a criminal level of a crime. I don't know that you can, and I think that it would be long and drawn out, and there's a lot of. It was certainly inappropriate. It's certainly wrong. I don't know that it's illegal. And honestly, on the nursing home stuff, it was certainly wrong. I don't know that it was illegal. I really don't know that Andrew Cuomo did anything illegal by covering up the data. I mean, we gave him that power. Our legislature gave him that power for 1 year to do whatever he wanted. He had carte blanche. I'm not sure it was illegal.
Other than the all the orders, I think you're probably right. The filing of that false instrument is going to be the one thing that might get him.
That might get him by filing that report that they knew.
And I don't know if that's going to be him too. Like it might be the Department of Health.
Dr. Zucker could be taking the fall on that one. And I don't know that it gets to Cuomo with any of this. And I think that's the saddest thing I can think about our entire state right now is this guy with all of these horrible actions over the last 10 months, and it may not have been anything illegal done by him. Like that's how much power this man has, that we may not even be able to do it. And if that doesn't make you uncomfortable, I just don't understand your view of politics. Like if that is not illegal, what is unacceptable for a governor? Like what is wrong?
And I hope if the impeachment doesn't get off the ground or become a thing, that there is a reintroduction of the referendum, to get referendums on the ballot in New York. So there is no mechanism right now for a recall of a governor that would require the ability for the voters to have a referendum vote in New York State to basically just dictate action. That does not exist in New York State. So hopefully that gets introduced in 2021 here, and I think no better time than the president to make that happen.
Remember when it was Donald Trump and everybody said, well, if you're not guilty, just call for an investigation and you'll be clean. Those people are oddly quiet right now. Like, well, if you know that you did nothing wrong on nursing homes, you should be wanting a federal investigation, obviously, because there's nothing that is more, I don't know what the right word is here, more comfortable, that should make you comfortable as a human being than giving the federal government full access to your entire life to search for wrongdoing.
They're here to help, Ben.
Obviously, anybody with any common sense would know that's a good idea. So, come on, Andrew, call for it. Let's go. Call for that investigation because you know you're innocent. Yeah. Let's do this.
Well, like I said, we got AG James, Attorney General Letitia James. She's investigating the nursing home and the sexual harassment allegations.
We'll see if that
if she can get a slam dunk on these, she's the front runner for mayor, or for governor. No.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, she's there. And also, while we're on this subject, can we talk also how sad it is that just because they are in the same political party, there is about I'll give it a 1% chance that the Federal Department of Justice ever asks or calls for an investigation into New York's deliberate and admitted covering up of data for the purpose of thwarting a federal investigation. And that's how comfortable these parties are with each other, is that that aide had no problem telling her own party, that's exactly what we did, that's exactly why we did it, but now that he's gone, we know it's not going to happen. Like, what?
Yeah.
Thank God for separation of powers, am I right?
Yeah.
Woohoo. Checks and balances.
All right, Mr. Hussong, before we let him go, any words of wisdom you want to leave the folks with?
I mean, nothing overly comes to mind other than when you're reading this stuff, understand it's being spun. You're being spun on one angle or another by both sides. Look at the words they actually use and then ask, why is this word in here? The word indicates possible, less than. Why would they say that instead of likely or proven or conclusive? Why are they saying that? And then be open to changing your mind, okay? Early on, it was possible that asymptomatic spread was thing. It was always unlikely, but it was possible. As more and more data came out that showed it wasn't happening, nobody could admit it. This is the cognitive dissonance, is nobody can ever acknowledge that they were wrong. Listen, my big thing was I thought population density was the biggest factor, and I started diving into that. I was wrong. I wasn't close to right, and it was sort of disheartening when I found that out. Like, well, there goes that theory in 3 hours worth of research. Cool. But that's what the data said, and we're not following data anymore. We're following egos. We're following people that have a track record of doing this. All right. And all we're going to do is continue to fund all of these pharmaceutical companies with all of this money that doesn't need to happen. It's not having the impact that we think it is. We have to be open to the idea of change your mind as the data comes in, but read the data that undermines your opinion and then make a decision. Don't ignore the data that comes in and says asymptomatic spread is not happening. Read the study. Like the first one that came out was out of China, and all of a sudden all these people that had cited multiple studies out of China for lockdowns and masks were like, well, you can't trust data out of China.
Inconvenient.
I mean, okay, but are we going to apply that standard to everything or just to the things we don't like? And it's been a year, guys. It's been a year that we've been dealing with this. If masks were so helpful, why did we get here? If social distancing was so helpful, why did we get here? And why is it that the areas of the world and the country that had the exact polar opposite approaches ended up with almost identical curves? It's not that doing nothing would have stopped it. It's that doing everything we did nothing to stop it. That's what's so frustrating.
Virus gonna virus.
There you go.
All right, folks. Before I didn't remind you guys, so smash that like button. Be nice to her before you smash the like button.
Wow. You took it to there.
Sorry.
It's National Women's Day, you prick.
I read an article on Women Whistleblowers Day. It was very fascinating. I should have shared that with you. Maybe I will later.
All right.
Anyway, so on that note, please like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, and you'll be updated to when we go live with new content. And we will see you all again next Monday for episode 41.